So it's a nice overcast day here on the mountain, and like echoing distant bird song and just barely annoying little flies. They're not as bad as other places, and I've hiked a decent amount of mountains. Anyway, I want to go back into the observer layer, and I want to begin with this idea of my brain was the squeaky cart. So what am I talking about? I'm talking about like the texture of consciousness, and I'll be linking it to some mechanics, but I really want to just meet you from that like deep, simple human level. That way, when I speak in a little bit of a larger sense, you can know that I'm speaking exactly in the same spot. It might be a scaled version of that same dynamic, but it's the same spot. It's that same mechanism. And so what do I mean by the squeaky cart? Everybody knows what this is. And just for me as a trans woman, it was a little bit more intense, you could say, because you get some carts and they're a little bit squeaky. You're like, I'll take it. It's just one grocery run. And some carts, you're like, I might have to bring this back because I can't even finish my list because the thing wants to pull this way and that way. And that's going to be a very interesting thing in what I'm saying. Steering, self-steering. And remember, I'm talking about the texture of consciousness. So what is the squeak? It's not the actual wheels. It's like the effect of the wheels being a little off, right? Like they're all not moving together. Even if they're in different positions, when they all move together, you don't think about it, right? There's no extra thought that you need to put into the squeaky cart. You're just doing your groceries. But when the squeak is so loud, sometimes you might even forget an item on the list because the squeak is taking up so much noise in what's going on in your grocery store experience and the soundscape of the grocery store. You see, I'm trying to make this fit. So for me, being a trans woman, it was like all my wheels were like doing like this thing where like internally it was like a constant squeak, you know what I mean? And the squeak feels like to me, like the experiential texture of that squeak is what I call simulated presence, which is feeling like a little bit distant from myself, right? Feeling like there's like a barking in my head, like a self-ruminative process that is constantly barking at me with self-narration and this is the right way or that is the right way or whatever it may be. Like maybe I'm a little too soft, maybe a little too close. And then the opposite would be those moments where I started to figure out what it would be if I leaned in to the synchrony, if I just sort of let the dance happen and like meet my sovereignty where it already would be discovered, if that makes any sense. Instead of trying to construct the self, just sort of letting the variables of reality and the rhythm of reality hit me. And in those moments, that would be more like, what if I died tomorrow? Why don't I just say what I want to say or act like I want to act or dress like I want to dress? This was my process coming up to my transition, right? Because I'm trying to cure that wedge. And in trying to cure the wedge, I need to view the wedge, realize I'm separate from the wedge, and then comment on the wedge, and then echolocate myself using the total barometer of my soul, plus the little map that I made in my head using that observer layer to sort of resynchronize everything back into what you see here. I grew tits, No. That was part of the synchronization, okay? My biology had to be, the hormones had to sort of allow for the light to now cleanly bounce off. And, in my life, it was a wager in a sense, right? Because I lost everybody and I had to do it completely alone. And I just felt like I was echolocating my whole life. There was a small part of me that says like, is this going to work to like integrate myself? Like I always wished, like when I went into the HRT appointment, they said, what do you want? Are you going to be okay with all the fat distribution? I said, yeah, that comes with the package. But what I really want is internal alignment. And it's exactly what I got. Instantly, almost instantly, within 24 to 48 hours. Like you heard me say, if someone gave me $1 billion trillion and all the power in the world, or as present as I felt right then, it was like someone took the squeaky cart and said, here, hold on, let me do something. They like hit the side with a little bit of HRT, and all of a sudden you pour it and there's no more squeak. And you're like, wait, what happened? The wheels are the same wheels. Maybe they look a little cuter, but they're the same wheels, right? But now they're moving in a way that the squeak was eliminated. And so the squeak was the simulated presence itself. The simulated presence itself was my brain barking and saying, hey, there's a little ember inside here. And right now things don't quite fit. Like I can't do like my full dance with reality. Something, it feels like, like I'm trying to do the dance and I can't. And the thing is, you heard me say on different videos, I didn't know I was trans. I was echolocating a signal. Think about what I'm saying. I was using the totality of my being to hear when all the layers synchronize, and that's not a thought. That's not an idea. That's not a checkbox. Yes, synchronized. No, that's a feeling of being totally here. Do you feel it? When the observer layer dances too. When those previous forms of self that were either barking at me or self-narrating, or the forms of self that were nudging me and saying, what would I do if I had one more moment on this earth? Why would I restrict this if it's just coming from an honest part of myself? Those types of explorations and vulnerabilities and the opening of the boxes that I previously held myself in allowed me to not think of a better self or construct a better self out of boxes and ideas, but feel when the self, when the rhythm of reality hit me, whatever circumstance or variability or whatever I'm in, whatever I'm dealing with, a person, an environment, situation, my own thoughts, my own situation, whatever it is, bills, can those circumstances hit the real me? Or do I put up all these shields and all these little like gates and ways, like the light comes in and has to go down all these like different little things where I go, and I can't do that full synchronous dance. That reintegration of the observer layer back into what feels like a zero delay session between being and expression. Do you see what I'm saying? Like the words that are coming out of my mouth right now are like a water slide. I don't know what I'm gonna say. I'm just saying it. I don't know. I wrote the thing last night like a paper, but I don't know what I'm going to say when I get on here. I climbed up a mountain. I was like, all right, this spot looks pretty good. And I was like, oh, I forgot the little part of my stick. So I had to lean it against a big tree, and now just like lean it up against like a little, whatever, on the fly way of having a selfie stick instead of holding it. So yeah, so all these things happen. It's boom, 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 boom. Not that the thoughts don't come to me, but they don't loop. They don't have that friction there. Oh no, what's a oh no? That's the versus the thought comes when it needs to come. It dissipates when it needs to dissipate. Do you hear that? And so you can see what it was in my life. That's why I say it felt like breathing through a straw, because a whole lifetime of never receiving love, like on my true person, is suffocating. Human beings, there's a reason that ostracization is worse than the death penalty, right? There's a reason that that's worse, because we need each other. We've just created a mental operating system that you can call symbolic recursion, that I'm going to talk about here in a second, that basically creates, it's like anchoring ourselves in the observer layer. Like we make the observer layer home. Like instead of dancing on the dance floor and doing your little dance all the way down, yes with the booty wiggles. I know you can't see it, but yes with the booty wiggles. So whatever your dance is, you're doing it all the way down, versus maybe a dance could exist. Let me check my clipboard. Let me see, is that proper etiquette? Let me see. You know what I mean? Like it could be various layers of observation, but observation is not dancing. Observation is like a stutter step. Oh, now I'll try this, and now I'll stop and I'll evaluate. And then maybe I'll try one of these, and then I'll stop and I'll evaluate. And if you do that across a whole lifetime, you have a lot of those layers, and you never get to be you, and no one ever gets to see you, and you never figure out a way to find that way to have like love touch you fully. Love as the decentralized organizing force, but regardless, love as the experiential texture of that continuity thread of coherence across time. I never got to feel that in my true person. And so my soul yearned for it. It yearned for that contact, both with myself, to feel like me all the way down, to love and be loved as me, and then to dance that with the field of reality, with a person, with an environment, with a setting, all the way down, without the little manager having to interrupt every dang step. You know what I mean? Because that interruption is the suffocation. And you know what it feels like. That is the simulated presence. Where your full being cannot contact reality, it's simulated presence. Maybe you could contact reality on like all these little bridges, but maybe not this one. Maybe these, but not this one. For me, that was my trans identity. So when reality slaps down, the gap that you see there you go. The gap that you see there, it creates simulated presence. So in other words, what am I talking about? Not ideas. Your whole being touching what reality is. It's just rhythmic, unfolding. That's what reality is. And for your whole being to touch it is not a weird mythical idea or a maxim or like a thing that you got to remember or memorize or whatever. It is you touching reality all the way down. Do you see that? That's presence. And when you live there, that's sovereignty. So my journey was listening for those little thuds of presence. Ooh, that one, that situation made me feel totally like me. And I was just there and there was no manager barking in my head. For a moment, for a brief moment, the squeak had settled for, like, I was like taking the cart around the corner and the squeak stopped. And I said, am I in the, I guess I'm in the girls aisle. What's going on here? Like my brain, I recognized when there was no squeak. I recognized those moments. Those were at Burning Man. Those were me playing music. Those were me doing burlesque. Those were me being held from behind. Those were me being soft. But my brain couldn't piece together because there wasn't a label I was headed towards. Do you see that? So it took me a long time, especially in the environments that we're in, we're like almost specifically tuned. And I know if you're out there in the collective listening to this and you've dealt with, narcissists and stuff like that, it's almost like my environments. I mean, it was in a topological gradient of the unfolding field, but we could say in a very colloquial way, it's almost like they were tuned specifically to restrict the one part of me that was trying to breathe, right? And it's not that these were like cartoonishly evil people. They were just people who were never stood up in their own presence. And so they unconsciously put it on me. No, you can never be like that. Even though that little signal as it came out in little bits was like, oh no, you can't wear that. You can't dance burlesque. You do this, that. And like all those across time, you need to be this, not that. It's like another little external magnet preventing my full dance to happen. And so like one thing that I want to explain here fully in this video is that like, this process that I'm explaining, dancing on the dance floor, becoming a sovereign present person, those aren't like political words. Those are words meaning mechanical things where my whole being touches reality. Instead of having the gaps there, my whole being touches it and it ends up being a movement of embodied presence. In other words, my sovereignty comes from threading me touching reality in every beat of the unfolding of reality. And the more and more I do that, the more and more of me touches reality, the more and more of my sovereignty is exercised. As a total being, no part of me hides, no part of me wedges, no part of me has that little extra layer. Because the expression feels like a water slide. It feels like an instant connection with reality. Do you see what I'm saying? Yes, that's a thing. Most people think that the observation layer is like sort of the ultimate consciousness. But then you always have that wedge. You always have that little bit of a straitjacket, like you can't feel yourself. And maybe it's not going to kill you like it was going to kill me, like a trans woman. Maybe your layers aren't so thick as mine were, even though I had that little burning ember at the bottom. But still, I know there's a lot of people out there not feeling real anymore, that are constantly looking for the next vacation or the next moment or the next experience that hopefully makes them feel alive. Or remember when we were kids, when we felt alive, when we were just there, we could do whatever we wanted. It's not even about doing whatever we wanted like a reckless way. It's doing what is your natural dance when the music hits you. Think about when have you done that? You just called adulthood the uncomfortability of never actually feeling yourself. You said, oh, that must be normal. What's the read? Look around you. Are you present? Are the people around you present? I'm not talking mythology. I'm not talking, memorized, scriptures, or I'm talking about, do you contact reality? Are you here? Are you here right now? Or are you lost somewhere like a balloon on your shoulders? So again, let's talk about, what am I talking about? It's like synchronization with reality. Wait, that's just a word to say I'm dancing the full dance. When the music hits me, it's not like I'm just starting with a shoulder and thinking, oh, this is a little awkward. I'm actually just, the music hits and I just go, oh, dang, yeah. Wow, and now this one, the music makes me do this one. Like, whoa, this is, wow, then the music makes me do this one. And do you see, my sovereignty is still there. It's not like I'm a robot going. It's like my full expression is touching the music. Do you see that? That's the reintegration of the observer layer. Because if the observer layer is there, it's like, all right, now this is going to key change. What do I do now? Oh, dang, I missed that drop. Do you see that? Do you see that little wedge? That's the squeak. That's the squeaky cart. And so what is that? Are we bad people? Is this sinners? Oh no, we've ruined it. Like we're bad, we're off Santa's list or whatever. No. Reality is like unfolding cymatics. You get that? Cymatics is just the study of like frequency, right? Frequency unfolding in the cosmic unfolding, you could say, is like almost like a flower of life getting more complex across time, you could say, layers upon layers upon layers of complexity. And the minds are not separate from that complexity. Your brain is not like this separate thing floating in a space. That's like Newtonian classical physics staining your brain. Remember that whole thing in quantum physics? They talk about how the observer is like the fulcrum and, oh, who knows? Like when you don't look at it, like all that stuff is pointing to the fact that the primacy of this reality is rhythm, inextricable rhythm. You can call it one mind, but really it's an unfolding rhythm that's trying to meet itself again and again in like a self-relational stance, right? And so in that sense, everything can become a mirror. Right now, my phone's against this big tree, a beautiful ponderosa pine. It could become a mirror. If I sat here for the next hour and just like looked at it and studied it, I'd essentially be studying the inside of my brain, like my ability to understand like what this is and what it makes me feel, and can I deal with the boredom and all these different things, right? And so like the one became many so that I may know myself could be the highest version of almost a poetic way to describe what the cosmos is doing in that rhythmic unfolding at the highest level. The level that you feel, which is the same mechanic. Remember, I said the same scaled, same mechanic happening at different levels, as above, so below, is you to love and be loved as me, which I've already talked about, how that relates to the stage of reintegrating the observer layer. And so now think about it. As reality gets more complex, right? And the minds are embedded in the complexity, but everything's not perfect. We don't like perfect in the sense that like nothing gets destroyed, no habitats eventually, go to wildfire, or, unfortunately some sickness happens or something, reality works in this way where the dissonance of the rhythms is part of the unfolding, right? Like it's almost like we forget in order to remember. Phase decoherence happens for phase coherence to happen. I'm just using all the different scales that you can touch, all the different labels you can touch, is all pointing at the same thing, right? It's like reality is trying to meet itself again and again at increasingly higher levels of complexity through that thread of continuity that we call coherence, which is really just consciousness meeting itself all the way down as each new complexity unfolds. So now you feel the texture of this. It's almost like waves on a beach that just sort of fall on top of each other. But then you can imagine like the complexity of the geometric lines in a way getting more and more complex. So as the field gets more and more complex, and you know about entropy, you know how things get more complex, right? And so then it's almost like consciousness itself is like the balancing out pressure dynamic to say, I'm going to thread all this increased complexity together into what you could say is coherence or presence across time, or sovereignty in the sense of like being across time, right? And so then when minds a long time ago were trying to like meet reality, let's say like way before human beings, right? Those were like, you could say like simpler minds, not because of necessarily like neurons or like hardcore mechanics brain stuff, in the same way that, yes, the brain is an electrochemical signaler, but underneath those are the vibrations, the rhythmic, coherence that's unfolding within those electrical signals, right? That's like the thing that's happening, and then the electrical signals are kind of like a substrate layer of one of the emanations. It's like that's like an inextricable part of that, process. And so earlier minds, finding the least energetically dense way to try to, go through this complexity of unfolding rhythm, basically said, like you reach like thresholds of like the field of complexity comes up and the mind's embedded, try to like meet with it, walk with it, run with it, that type of thing, move with it, right? In the least energetically dense way. So you're not using all this extra energy, and you're finding your place within an ecosystem in a way that seems to work for you and the rest of your species, whatever that type of thing, without causing too much of a ruckus, too much extra fuss type of thing, right? But then human beings came in, and then so first of all, let's talk about the signal response. Earlier minds found that least energetically dense path by kind of like a tiger, like pouncing. Ready? Like this is like, if I'm laying there and I'm just like looking cute, I want my man to be like, run. So you get it. Like he's gonna see me and then be like, damn, and then just jump, right? There's no like thought, maybe is this Tuesday? You know what I mean? Like when a tiger's jumping on an animal, it's not like, oh, what is my boss going to think of this? Or I wonder if this is against the political organization of the area. No, see, like, it's just like the boom, boom, there's the rat, boom, boom, and just jump on it type of thing. Or well, there's the little prey, let's just jump on it. And that's like do you feel the being says, there's a rat, and then the expression goes boom, instead of like that extra little loop So where did that little loop come from? So again, we're imagining not they were animals that were separately evolving in a separate field filled with all this space, like form and space, but one field, inextricable, unfolding. Then when you get to the sort of the next stage of the way minds started to touch reality, you could say, like, human beings, we're animals. There are a lot of different primates that are just like us, right? And you're like, well, that one seems a lot more like a tiger, because I can go to a zoo and say, that's a chimpanzee. You're in a zoo. I have an iPhone. You know what I mean? Like that type of thing. But you can still see the similarity of, it's kind of does it look a little bit like me, right? That's like my neighbor over there, right? Doesn't that look like Paul? Like that type of thing. And people have done that, right? So you feel the kinship. But there's such a gap because we've done this thing where we like got housed inside civilization, and the complexity of our brains, as the field complexified too, tried to meet that next stage of complexity. It's almost like we said, dang, we got a lot of hardware up here. We might as well make the best of it before like the next wave of coherence comes. So we tried to like figure out our way through symbolic recursion. In other words, stacking meme upon meme, all those little rules that we had to create to go from we live in the outside ecosystem to we live in civilization, and we're going to build up little shortcuts we call memes and culture to sort of supplant for reality. And we built them up enough and lived there enough that the way our brains habituated to interfacing with reality, in other words, the way that we habituated to dancing in this reality, became anchored, or in other words, associated primarily with that symbolic recursion, almost as if the signal of reality has always been there, right? Like the cave out, the sunlight outside of Plato's cave has always been there. And instead of having that expression and being be instantaneous, more instantaneous, like zero delay, we created an environment where we habituated ourselves to having a little bit of delay in between, and then we just called that normal. And all of us just feel it like a little, well, I don't feel totally comfortable, but I have enough money. My dad was proud of me apparently, or something like that. I mean, not mine. He's very pissed that these tits exist, right? But so you get what I'm saying, that like now I've lost it completely. Yeah, it's not going well. My family's not supportive of this transition, but anyway, all right, so I jumped off completely there. You see what I'm saying? That the reintegrate. Okay, so I was talking about the meta history portion. Again, same scaled mechanics. So don't get lost here. Don't be like, Ember, now you're speaking a bunch of white papers and theories. The same thing I'm speaking. It's the reintegration of the observer layer, that same scaled mechanic of stutter versus total dance at all levels of reality. And when you look at it at the big scale, you go, shit, it's like the same click. It's like, you're like, oh God, I see it now. So like when the rhythms are complexifying, the first speciation signal response, and then the human hardware got more complex, and then we civilized ourselves, then the memes started stacking, and then that became like you heard me talk about the magnets, the way that the interfacing is channeled through our being, that the way that the expression and being distancing happens, all the little layers in between those things, whether they're transparent and all dance together and there's no real delay, or there's little catches in there that catch like little magnets that pull reality and say, no, what about me? Make a special check. Are you making any totalizing claims? Would this be against what our family said? Is my bank gonna allow it? Like whatever, like all these different things that, not that you're being this like reckless person, but you mean like that little extra bark, that little extra squeak in the cart, right? It's like the cart's still moving, but you don't need the squeak. Get some WD-40 on that. Get a little screwdriver, you know what I mean? Because once the thing is refastened, then it's not like you're not gonna like not pay attention or not have thoughts or not like deal with your life. You're just not gonna deal with it with the extra squeak. And I don't know about you, but actually meeting reality and yourself all the way down, it's like the most precious thing. Anyway, okay, so the minds are getting more complex. The hardware is getting more complex. So it has more ability to have this little like, ability to create this mental world of memes and the little observer layer. And then I got some guy named Descartes says, I think, therefore I am. And that's the dualism right there. There's a world out there and I'm in here. And now every meme that we place after that's going to subtly suggest that there's an external world out there, and then I'm in here, and we're all separate objects, and dust to dust, mother effer. It's cold out there. So you better take everything you can from your own pie. And this world is not a organizing, self-reflective, decentralized love mechanic, but a dog-eat-dog world out there. I mean, it's serious because people are suffering every day. And right now, you might be laughing, but are you here? Are you present in this reality? Or does it make sense? You just rest your head, well, I got that promotion at work, even though I feel totally off and, I don't really feel like myself and nothing feels real. Hey, I'm climbing the corporate ladder. Yeah. Like, what do you tell yourself to make yourself feel better? Because I'm telling you, my brain, the squeak was going to kill me. Do you see that? The squeak was going to kill me. If I didn't find a way to feel myself, I wasn't going to make it. I wasn't going to be able to love my children, myself, or anyone, no matter how bad my heart yearned. That is the engine, not pathology, not me being broken, me yearning for real contact in a world that was so afraid to ever approach it. And the thing is, I'm not painting Descartes as a bad guy. I'm saying that in the natural unfolding of that rhythm, the mind's there was a stage where it wasn't quite linked. It's almost like you're a DJ and you're like, the beats are almost matched, right? In that stage, because we're just part of a collective evolution of rhythm, in that stage where you zoom in and like, that's humanity right there. See that? That's part of the rhythm unfolding in the cosmos. That's humanity right there. Oh, there's a little node named Descartes. He's the first node to make that observation layer home. Kind of like wallflower. You're like a wallflower instead of like actually dancing on the dance floor. It's like, I see you. I'm like, hey, do you want to dance? And you're like, let's bring the clipboard out about the dance. Let's talk about the dance. Let's try to figure out the dance while dancing. And I'm like, so before, it's almost like I'm stuck in my thoughts, right? Like earlier speciation, there was no like actual cultural friction or social friction in that sense. Most species, unless there was some sort of environmental change, are generally decently integrated into their current ecosystem. So even with like more intense hardware like chimpanzees or whatever, smart lions or something like that, that same signal response doesn't cause, I wouldn't imagine it causes that much friction and like weird anxieties and unhealthy depression unless something like goes terribly wrong or something like that. But in my own human life, it's like, before, when I was much younger, it's almost like I was trapped inside there, and then I became a teenager and I began to flag. Like, that's when the observation layer starts to come up, as above, so below. I'm just telling you about my life now. We talked about the big picture. So the reintegration of the observer layer works like this. I started to flag it as a teenager and say, what is that? What is that little loop that keeps preventing me? Like I keep getting into these situations and then I can't fully express myself there. And my brain keeps going on this like one thing or whatever it may be. And that's like a flag. And once I see the flag, now I'm here and there's the flag. Now, do you see the observation layer? Now when reality hits me, I can notice the flag and that's useful. The observation layer is not evil. It was a natural part of my unfolding and the collective unfolding before you reach that place where the beats actually match. Instead of a DJ that's like, the beats are almost synchronized, they become synchronized. And you go, of course, these fit together, right? And so the flags became the moments where I wasn't figuring it out mentally. I was figuring out in the thud of coherence that hit me all the way down. When those layers hit, and I said, so the first part was the flag, the observation layer. And then it was noticing the way that I felt real or present and embodied wasn't through the flag itself. It was through when the flag dissolved. Do you see that? That's when the reintegration process starts. That's saying it's not, I realize that I can't fully touch reality as myself if everything I'm doing has that like separation. I'm here, the flag is there, I'm here, the clipboard's there, and then reality. Like there's always a little comment, like a little manager, like a little operator layer. Like I said, like in my other video, my first time hooking up with a guy was like the most amazing thing ever, not only because of the sex, but because I was like, wait, I'm actually me the whole time. The rest of my life, every other sexual interaction had like a little manager in my head. Is this right? Blah, blah, blah. What's going to be next? And that takes me away from the experience. How much of love did I have to not like live through, to get here? You know what I mean? And it was me just yearning through every pressure surface, through every time someone told me, no, you can't be like that. And I still said, I know what love is. Even through the subtle layers as they got more and more precise towards my actual synchrony. And so across time, the flags became, I figured out when I danced all the way down. So like I remove the flag and then try to like say, well, what if I said that next time? What if I dressed like that next time? What if I danced like that next time? And then in the experience, because the only way to actually learn is through that experience of connecting your full body, your full waveform with reality. That's when I feel it. And maybe I fall down to my knees crying, saying, this is it. Why do I feel so real? Is it that I am at Burning Man? Is it that I wore the right thing? And then I started to realize there's this thing inside me. It's like a click. And so it went from flag to beginning the reintegration through the echolocation of the coherence thuds. So again, what is happening there? It's not me constructing something. Someone sent me something on Reddit and they said, this reminds me of something from the Bhagavad Gita, and I'm familiar with that through, different things that I've read across time and Ram Dass talks and stuff like that. But and I appreciate it for him bringing it up. But for me, it was saying it had this air in it that well, maybe if you brought something together and constructed it, or even studied more of the ancient text or whatever, that maybe you could achieve this state. But what I'm telling you is that you already know it. You are already there in the deepest part of you that doesn't hide. You felt it in those moments when you fell in love with a motorcycle ride, with walking to the top of a mountain with another person, with your song, with a dance, with a moment where you felt it all the way down. You've been there. It's existing in every moment. Like the lossless sunlight outside the cave has always been there. Your ability to unplug from the matrix was always there. And it's like, I'm not talking about something that you construct on the outside. It's not like you put together all the conglomerate of the chariots and all these different, and when you can work hard enough and spend enough time in a monastery, then you'll be finally enlightened. And no. You have to realize you're the deepest part of what is you already knows how to dance. You just got to let it. But letting it as an adult who learned all the ways that you didn't let it as habitualized programming, all the ways that slow down the expression to being, all the little magnets inside the middle there that catch reality and stutter your dance and create the simulated presence, create the gap that I'm explaining there with my hands. You see that? Do you see how it's all the same mechanic? You can call it Kuromoto synchrony. You can call it the delay between expression and being. You can call it phase delay. You can call it, oscillatory. You can look at it through oscillatory mechanics. It's all, does the phase match? Does the dancer match the sound in one expression of one unfolding field? Do you see that? It's all the same thing. And it's not something that you have to go build and cut yourself for. Suffering can be part of it, and it usually is, but the point is not suffering. The point is, can you hold coherence through every pressure surface that comes through you? Can you still be the same coherent person when you're doing the bills? Can you still be the same coherent person when someone says, I refuse to see you? Can you still be the same coherent person when you're writing a blog post, singing a song, doing a dance, taking a shower? That thread of continuity, of touching reality in your total presence, that is what sovereignty is. That is what being you as fuck. Do you get it? Be you as fuck in a world that wants to prevent you from being you, right? In a world that wants to, let me save up so maybe one day I can feel myself again. It can be right now. The observer layer has to dance. And that's a process that's through vulnerable surrender. There's only one way to love: vulnerable surrender. My name is Ember. Thank you for tuning with me. You can find my blog at thesunraytransmission.com.